Psychology, the science of behavior, way back started in 1854, in the year 1854. Then the father of psychology, Sigmund Freud, was born in 1856. He is the father of psychology. So the most interesting thing one I find in human behavior is denial. More of human behavior with respect to each factor. Certain amount of basic science. This is physiological psychology. It talks about fatigue, the physical fatigue, the mental fatigue. That's why all these labor-oriented jobs. A person should not be allowed to work for more than 8 hours.
Physical problems than psychological issues. We start disliking our loved ones and blame them for their behavior because we are unaware such psychological conditions even exist. In today's episode, let's understand human psychology from the star himself, Dr. C.K.N., a psychologist, a molecular scientist and innovator of low glycemic index diabetic friendly sugar. Welcome to Dr. C.K.Nandagopalan's YouTube channel. I'm your host, Susan. Hi, Doctor.
Hi to you.
Doctor, we would like to know what psychological issues we face in our daily life.
These are the studies, what I studied when I was young. And that time, of course, there was not quite a good amount of contribution was there. After that, it's more than 40 years now. Psychology is expanded, and I would call it as a crazy subject, and you need a lot of patience to go through this. Whatever it is, all started in the 1800s. Initially, they were studying the human soul, study of soul. Then, after some time, they thought it should be the human mind. Then the principle of science was even soul cannot be defined or seen or whatever. Mind also the same. Mind is a philosophical term, brain is a scientific term.
What is the difference between mind and soul, Doctor?
Soul is the one which is in our scriptures, it's Atma, Uya. What functions you, which cannot be seen. You cannot pinpoint an organ and say this is your soul, right? Okay. So in science, the principle of science, you have to see the substance, see the matter. Soul is a matter which you cannot see, which cannot be explained, which cannot be defined. At the same time, mind is also a brain is a word. Brain is a scientific term, scientific word. A physiological term is mind, right? Mind again, you cannot pinpoint a particular part of a brain or a body and say it's mind, right? You understand that?
But because we are thinking, they say we think from our mind.
Thinking is different. Mind, okay, mind, the word comes mind. Where is your mind? There is no specific place where the mind works, right? The consciousness by itself is from every human cell. So after some time, they said, okay, it was considered psychology as a study of consciousness. So consciousness, when it comes, it is subjected to the brain again. That's what they thought. But if you take consciousness, it works from every part of the cell. And we will not go in deep into that. That's a different kind of explanation altogether. So they were thinking about subconsciousness, pre-consciousness, unconsciousness. So how can we call it as consciousness? So finally, they landed up with psychology means a science of behavior. Science of behavior both in terms of human and animals. Okay. So, how can you bring in science into behavior? In my books, you cannot. But still, I think J.B. Watson, prior to that, Titchener, all these guys, they came out with psychology is a science of behavior, and that's what stands till now. Psychology, the science of behavior, way back started in 1854, in the year 1854. Then the father of psychology, Sigmund Freud, was born in 1856. He's the father of psychology. I think he died in 1939, if I'm not mistaken. He's a guy who was born in Austria, Vienna. He lived in Vienna. He's a German-speaking Austrian. And he was good in English and French too. Why he was called father of psychology is because he's the guy who gave the concept of psychoanalysis. Then, like many, J.B. Watson was an American psychologist. He had, I think the first ever psychological clinic came in 1910. All that kind of history is there when we look at psychology. This is all some of the anthropological evidence of what is this subject all about. So Sigmund Freud contributed a lot. I admired Sigmund Freud for his defense mechanism. 10 of them, what he has given. I think every one of us, I would request everyone, viewers, to go and read this 10 different types of different mechanism, defense mechanisms by the human brain or human mind, whatever you call it. Out of which, the one which I practice is sublimation, act of sublimation. So the most interesting thing one I find in human behavior is denial. Denial.
Okay. Why do you
Then when I speak to something which you don't like, and when I come and find something in you and say this is what you did, this is what you deny. You say no, I have not done it, right?
Okay.
I'm just giving you an example. So denying is a defense mechanism by itself to protect your brain, to protect your behavior. You follow?
So
the brain comes out with that denial.
Okay, so you do a mistake, and when somebody blames you, you deny it.
I deny it.
Okay.
That's how I protect myself. By keep on denying it, one day I consider myself I have not done it.
Oh.
When you keep on speaking a lie, it becomes truth one day. You know that, right?
Yes.
That's like 10 difference mechanisms. Very, very, very beautiful. What Sigmund Freud would think. But he himself was a neurotic guy in his lifetime. So he's the one who contributed a lot. That's why they call him a father of psychology. Sigmund Freud is very interesting to go through. He's the guy who gave its principles of id, ego, and superego. Id is the last desire. Ego is the one which comes and execute the id. Superego, if the id is wrong, superego will block it. You got the point?
Yeah.
Say, suppose, seriously, I tell you this example. If you see a beautiful girl in a park, she's a stranger, very beautiful to your eyes. The id will turn around and say that, oh, how beautiful it would be if I go and kiss her lips. The ego may try and find means and ways to execute it, but the superego says you will get slippered in the crowd. Right? Something like that. Yeah, so the lust, the desire, whatever is the id and the ego and the superego. So this was explained very well by Sigmund Freud. He was the father of psychoanalysis, and he has done a lot of work. A lot of contributions are there. Then came a lot of psychologists who gave a lot of contribution in terms of emotions, motivations, and personality, learning, and so on. But psychology by itself is a funny and a crazy subject in my books because, I went through that. But then there are branches of psychology which deals about, there's four major branches. Those days when we studied was, one was developmental psychology, which talks about from prenatal to the old age. Prenatal is how you get a baby conceived, and the zygote and the embryo period and the fetus period and all that stuff. Then the child is born in the infancy period for the first 15 days. Then the childhood, then you come to adolescence, then you come to puberty, all that puberty after the adolescence, then adulthood, then middle age, then old age, then senile psychosis, all that kind of thing. The degeneration, not more science, more of human behavior with respect to age factor. Certain amount of basic science in that. Then physiological psychology, that's the most interesting one. They study more of sensory organs, the portions of the brain, the cortex, the cognition, the cognitive factors, all that kind of thing. Your sensory organs like eye. If you take the eye, it's the most, the king of the organ in the body. So it has limitations. It has visual spectrum, they call it. The Snellen chart, what you read, the one which you go to an ophthalmologist and optometrician, they keep a board away from you. They make you read it, right?
Yes.
They ask you to read the numbers or whatever. That's called Snellen chart. That was designed by physiological psychology. Then there are a lot of tests for hearing ability. Then when it comes to the question of the study about illusion and size constancy. Illusion is something when you stand in the beach near the sea, the sky and the water will be touching at one point.
Yes.
But it is not touching actually. But your visual spectrum is limited. It sees like that. In a railway track, if you stand, at one point you see both the track are touching each other. It's not touching, right? Wherever, however distance you go, it has to be parallel, right? So, but you see it like that. That's called illusion. Size constancy is something that if you see a double-decker 747 Boeing, it's a huge aircraft. When it is parked on the ground, when you go near it, you can see how big it is. But when it flies on the very high on the sky, it looks so small.
Yeah.
It is not actually small, but your eye is looking at it is small. So visual spectrum varies from species to species. Like what the dogs can see, you cannot see. What the monkeys can hear, you cannot hear. Okay? In Tamil, monkeys are called Vanarar. Vanarar means they can listen to the frequency of the cosmic waves.
Wow.
Oh yeah. So later on, when I studied our ancient science, I went through all these things. So this is physiological psychology. It talks about fatigue, the physical fatigue, the mental fatigue. That's why all these labor-oriented jobs. A person should not be allowed to work for more than 8 hours. Hard labor, because that is his power. That is his energy source. That's all. After that, the fatigue will set in.
Yeah, it's been changed now.
Yeah, if you see the ATC people, radar, they'll be working in radar. All the planes will be flying in the radar. They can see all that. I have seen all that. It's a very sensitive job. One mistake he makes, there's going to be a flight accident. So he's allowed to only work 45 minutes to 1 hour. It's such a concentrated job. There'll be another officer sitting with him who will be monitoring him. Is he doing any mistake? Then this officer will take over. This guy will monitor this fellow. It will be like that. Two radar officers will sit down. So all these there are a lot of contribution on physiological psychology. Then you come to social psychology. Social psychology talks about man as a social animal and his behavior with respect to society, with respect to the family, all that kind of thing. It goes on and on and on and on. Then came advanced social psychology and all that later. And then you have abnormal psychology, which reads about your mental disorders, all your phobia, hysteria, OCD, all that kind of thing. Then the psychotic disorders, the minor form of mental disorder, all that kind of, abnormal behaviors, which you brand them. You have the mental hospitals and all that, right? You have a lot of people put in there. So it studies about all that. Psychiatry is something different. Psychiatry is what you must know is a guy who does MBBS, basic medical qualification, moved down to do psychiatric medicine. DPM, it's called Diploma in Psychiatry, PG Diploma in Psychiatric Medicine, because he's the one who is authorized to write medicines, psychiatric medicines, for the mental patients. That is what is psychiatry. But he's purely dependent on a clinical psychologist. The guy who does psychology, there's something called clinical psychology. In clinical psychology, we have a lot of practical tests and all that. So, in that, the clinical psychologist will assess the person and then he will, arrive at the conclusion or diagnosis, what is his problem. That will be referred to a psychiatrist, and psychiatrist based on that will write the medicines. You got the point now?
Yes,
A
yes.
psychiatrist is not a psychologist. A psychiatrist is different. A psychologist or a clinical psychologist is different. There are industrial psychologists and so on. And now psychoneurosis and all that kind of things happen. There are a lot of practicals we have in psychology. They're all very good ones, like depth perception, how to measure a depth perception of a person. Gordon whistle, which can be the capacity of the hearing, and then you have always different types of intelligence tests to measure intelligence quotient and all that stuff. Then lot of variation and expansion in psychology, which came later after 1985. Then today it has become too huge and complicated. And whether it really studies the science of behavior, it cannot be universal, because science of behavior, the behavioral pattern of humans will vary from geographical condition to geographical condition, socio-economic factors, and so on. This is what is basically a spectrum of psychology. So now, whatever is your question, I think we will move to our next program. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. We have come to the end of this episode. We will continue more on psychological problems that we face in our daily lives. Till then, it's your host Susan signing off. Please like, subscribe and share to the ones you care. Love you all.